A huge thank you to followers and supporters of the channel. 400 handguns in. We had yet to do a Beretta from Beretta. We did a Langdon Tactical, did a surplus Beretta, but not a current one. So many of you asked for an APX A1. Word got up to them, and now here we have it, an APX A1 compact tabletop review and field strip coming up next on GBGuns. Arriving in a nice box with an ode to the slide cut and styling on it. We have the push-pull style latches on these things, which can require a bit of effort, particularly difficult to do with my filming setup, but I'll get to it. You notice there's also 2 spots for a lock to make this a lockable case. Come on! There we go. Alright, inside. Open up, we've got the gun. We have a magazine loader, 2 15-round magazines, because this is the compact model. 2 additional back straps, our federally mandated lock, and up top, there is some paperwork, but no manual, and a bore brush. This registration thing is a safety notification in a bajillion languages, which is kind of cool. I know you guys don't care, but personally, I used to be a cryptolinguist, speak a few languages. It's fun for me to see things like that and get reminded of those. Let me get the box out of the way and we'll take a look at the gun. But first, notes from the manual is usually part of this video. I could not do that because a manual was not included in the box. I went searching, found a PDF. That, as well as the specs, pricing, where to find these things, all that kind of stuff, will be in the article over at gbgunsdepot.com. Check for the pinned comment. I'll post that there. And I noticed something in reading that manual. I figured out possibly why you guys demanded I review one of these, even though there were already lots of other reviews out there. There's some things in there that I did not see mentioned or covered in any of the existing videos. I will do my best to fully represent this gun for you guys, because, well, you're why I have it. So, the APX A1 is an update to Beretta's modular pistol design system. That's right, this is a chassis gun. You can remove the serialized chassis out of it in exchange for different frames and things. I love that modularity. It's a little more complicated on this one than other makes out there, but not as complicated as others I've seen. This compact size I went for because that's sort of the norm of what we reviewed out there. And you notice it looks a little bit shorter. While we do have 15 rounds of 9mm on tap, it is a 3.7 inch barrel. And I bet that speaks well to those who like to appendix carry, where barrel length and slide length is the most uncomfortable part. So a little bit shorter than the standard 4 inch. With it being shorter, that means we're potentially getting less velocity, less energy out of the same round that we would out of a 4 inch barrel. However, there is ammunition out there meant for smaller guns. We are getting a shorter sight radius, but as you can see, this is optics ready. Now, it does not include the plates, but they do have multiple plates. I'll list all those out in the article. That's a way of keeping initial price down, especially since not everyone is in that red dot or die category. Lets you get a hold of the gun cheaper and quicker and easier, and then you pick up the plate for the optic you want versus paying more to get plates for that may or may not fit the optic that you have to choose from. Onto our standard tabletop. Locking the slide back to the rear, very flat, broad top to the slide. The gun itself, spec-wise, is not necessarily wider than the norm for the category and size class. It just looks that way with this really broad, flat top. With the slide locked out of the rear, we can see we're clear and check for magazine ejection or release. And you can see we have ejection. That is kicking against gravity, knocking those mags out, which I really appreciate. Witness windows are on the back, not on the sides, and you can see with that center cut there for the magazine release, magazine catch, that we have an ambiable gun. Now that they have it set up as a reversible magazine release, some folks like that. I've heard complaints of people saying that their knuckle or their grip somehow bumps the magazine release, or that while holstered there's a risk of, let's say you're right-handed, you've got it here, if this isn't shielded, that it can be bumped. So that's why it is reversible, but not full true ambi. While we have this open, let's check that slide lock and release on the other side. A little stiff, but functional. Not super practiced from that side. This side, much easier. That is something that tends to happen on these things. It's nice to have it on there, but you end up with a little bit of flex because the actual catch is on this side of the gun. So that's being transferred and torqued across. Coming up front, see we've got room in the slide. That little half moon above there is because it's a Browning tilting barrel and you need room for that tilt to happen. Slide to frame fit is nice and tight. The finish on this thing is just beautiful. I've been stunned since I got it. It still has some shipping grease on it, but nice rich black. Slide to frame is good and tight. We have a little bit of rounding on the edges here to aid with holstering. That was a major trend a while back that I think is, while visually cool, kind of unnecessary because I've yet to hear an account of a gunfight that was won by reholstering faster than the other guy. Just be careful, take your time putting it back in the holster. We have 2 slots of pick rail up front. That seems like less than normal, but that's because this is also a shorter barrel than normal. Texturing on the front of the trigger guard makes sense for a European gun, since in Europe that's where that support finger up front trend is popular. Single undercut of the trigger guard that comes pretty good and high. And since we're here, let's take a look at that trigger. Check for clear. Very prominent safety dingus that works. We come pretty much, I mean the trigger moves a little bit, but essentially as soon as the safety's out of the way, you are at the wall. A little bit of grit to the brake. Reset's pretty short. A little bit of grit again, and I don't know if the microphone's picking it up, if you guys can hear that in there. A little bit of friction inside. That type of friction tends to go away with use. I bet after a few hundred rounds, this trigger gets nice and smooth. But a good high undercut there that is rounded on the edge, so you don't get Glock knuckle. I appreciate that. It's a 2-finger grip for me until the magazine is in. Then I can get all 3 fingers on there with my XXL hands. Notice that the magazines have a little bit of shape to them, and there's this high cut that assists in stripping a magazine if you do not know the proper way to clear a Type 3 malfunction. Man, that ejection sure kicks it out nice. Excellent texturing on the front strap here. Aggressive enough to feel it, not aggressive enough to hurt. We've got a little bit of sandpaperish texture in the high contact points, including a spot for resting the support hand or for indexing your trigger finger while firing, which I appreciate that. Long tail, always a good thing, as I always show, because I like to index like that on my way in with the magazine. So that is included. The backstraps we'll get to a little bit later on, since the process is a little more involved than I was expecting. Haven't tried it yet, shouldn't be too hard though. Nice deep tang to keep you free and clear from the slide. Slide to frame fit in the back. We have some wiggle, but that really doesn't matter because your sights are moving with it. Blacked out rear that does have a little bit of a ledge on it and a fiber optic red front. It's a rather broad sight, a combat size sight if you will, which makes sense for a carry gun. And coming down around the right side of the gun, there's our slide lock release, and of course the magazine release is reversible. This detent here, this little button, is a striker release. It's a way of releasing the striker for disassembly without having to pull the trigger. Some folks like that, some departments want that. That's why it's on here. Next we'll field strip the APX A1 and take a look inside the gun. Take 2 on field stripping this because I tried to do it the way the manual described. It didn't make sense. Saw a couple videos online that some seemed plausible, others not, but it is a little bit difficult. The manual suggests having a punch or a ballpoint pen, something like that. Let me reset this. Alright, the reason for that is this button here is how you deactivate the striker. So pull back just a little bit, push the button and you'll hear a click. There it is. Now, to turn this takedown lever, you've got to push from this side. You can see it's popping out a little bit, and with that out, now we can turn the lever down and the slide comes off the top. Not nearly as bad as some videos portrayed, but the instruction manual, I guess, just wasn't clear enough for me. So with that out of the way, now we can take a look inside, and you can see what appears to be a very simple and clean setup for the chassis itself. And we will get to that later because this is a modular handgun. You can see the serial numbered part is this chassis. That is legally the firearm in the United States, so you can change out grip modules and things. Looking inside our slide, we can see, I love it, nested springs. We actually have 3 springs in here. To remove that, we're going to push forward, pull it out. Metal guide rod with 3 nested springs. That is excellent. To get our barrel out, tap down, move it forward a little bit, and then we'll come out. And now we can take a look in our slide. The slide is heavy. I'm curious how that's going to feel under recoil, if that weight is going to absorb some of the energy and make for smoother shooting, or if that more reciprocating mass is going to cause more rocking in the hand. Time will tell. It also depends on the ammo you're shooting and how well you grip the gun, but very nicely made, nice and clean in there. And we can see we have some chamfering around the edge of the barrel, as well as a nice broad feed ramp. We'll check for chamber support. Doing that using some Liberty Civil Defense. It is nickel plated, that's for corrosion resistance, but also does reduce friction. And when we drop this in, we're listening for a plunk, like that. We want to make sure it can rotate freely. That gives us an indication of how well honed the chamber is. And then for chamber support, you're looking for how much brass beyond the bend there is exposed. And we do have a little bit underneath, so it is not quite a fully supported chamber. The plus to a fully supported chamber is that helps should you have brass that wants to rupture an overpressure round, some type of malfunction or failure of the brass. If it's a fully supported chamber, it helps keep the forces going out the barrel. When it's not like this, you do run the risk of the brass rupturing, Tech Kitty agrees, and kicking some pressure back into the grip of the gun. That is the strongest part of the brass back there. It's just something to be aware of. Now normally at this point I'd throw everything back together and tell you about the range video, but I'm curious about these grip modules, getting to the chassis, as well as the backstraps. Now backstraps, I know a lot of people ignore them, but they can greatly change the way a gun fits your hand. So with the factory one in there that comes, you can see that I can overextend my trigger finger if I want. However, I can comfortably rest it in the middle of the pad. To change out these back straps, you have to have the slide off the gun, and there is, I believe it is this piece. That's not going to show up on camera. Let me see if I can get some proper lighting in there to show you guys what I'm talking about. Alright, it works from this angle, so you can see the angle that I have the grip. We're going to come in close and right. Can I reach it from without blocking the camera? This is a tough spot. This is where the renderings are great in manuals. This grayish piece down here I'm pointing at matches the same kind of gray off color you see here. That is the piece that is holding in the back straps, and according to the manual, sliding that over and pushing down lets us release the back strap. There we go. So you can see this is now popped out. I should be able to pull that off and swap to the back straps. Let's see how that does. Yes. So that's the key, quite literally. And YouTube reviewer, this is all in the user manual. You can see the pinned comment and go read the manual over on my website to see all of this stuff. This was the medium backstrap, came off nice and easy. I will next try the small. If we can see an easy visual difference, there's just a little bit less swell to the small. And with that on there, oh wow, that did indeed reduce the overall circumference feel. My trigger reach is the same, so since there's no change happening between the tang and the trigger reach is the same, but I can get my fingers almost all the way around the gun. In fact, it would be cramped for me to give a good two-handed grip on this but for a one-handed grip, it really lets me get on there. Now we'll try the large. There we go, and you can see it's filled up in here, so now we're getting, oh yeah, I can feel it. I cannot reach my knuckle onto the trigger as I could previously, so this would be a more instinctive, easy way for me to have good trigger placement. However, it is creating a bit of a bind spot for my hand through here, and you can see there's a little bit of swell there. I could certainly get two hands on this easier. This feels a bit more like a full-size gun. Now this is something that I suggest everyone goes through and does themselves. Ideally do it at the range and fire some rounds, because feeling it dry and feeling it on the range in recoil can be quite different, but it can dramatically change how easy it is for you to operate a firearm well. I think, just going off of this in my experience doing this with a few hundred other guns, I'm going to stick with the medium. Also, I'm hoping to get Miss Tia in the range video for this, so let's go neutral. To get that, lock that back in place, we're just going to slide our key back up in there, and it should click into place. No, didn't quite get a click, but it is all the way in there. Interesting. So that's the process for the back straps. Next, let's take a look at that chassis. This is yet another aspect of the APX A1 that I did not see any videos on. Let's hope the manual described things well. Alright, so with the gun already field stripped to the point where it is, and the takedown lever rotated here, we're going to push or pull it from right to left. It does not want to pull. Let's see if I can push. Nope. Interesting. That is not wanting to come out at all. It might come out with some force, but as I have not shot the gun yet and done the regular review, I don't want to risk altering or messing anything up. Supposedly, you're able to take this lever out like on a 320, and then in the back here, you need to lift this spring out of its groove, hold it up, and then with another pin, so using your third hand, another punch, you're going to push this pin out, and then the frame itself can come out. It is in the user manual, should be basic user level friendly. I have yet to grow a third hand, so I'm going to stick with things the way they are. My apologies, guys, for failing you on this so far, but I do not want to risk whacking something out of alignment and not having the gun shoot the way it was meant to out of the box. So I'm going to leave it as is. If you guys really want to see that frame process come out, let me know in the comments, and if we get enough of them, once I've done the shooting portion of this, I'll make another video on that aspect of it. So now let's get the gun back together, and I'll tell you about what will be in the shooting impressions video. Now reassembly, of course, is just inverse of disassembly, so I don't need to talk through that. But in the shooting impressions video, you will see the absolute first shots through the gun, capturing all of that on camera for any initial impressions. Then we'll do full magazine +1 to see how the gun runs fully stuffed. Take it over to our trademark signature What's for Dinner table to see what the gun eats. Firing 10 additional loads through it of varying types. Then the spinner target for sights and trigger control. And some practical accuracy before giving you concluding thoughts. Speaking of trigger, it's pretty nice. Right to that wall, and a decent duty weight pull, but a pretty clean break. I'm looking forward to breaking this gun and getting some more experience with it. I went with a compact size because that's a more fair comparison since I've reviewed so many compacts, but if that trigger smooths out, and with the ergonomics and all this, I'm thinking a full size would definitely be a fun range trip, especially with an optic plate to throw an optic on there. But keeping with the way things are done on this channel, we review things as they come out of the box, unmodified. And then later, if you guys want to see it and we get enough comments for it, we do some follow-ups. But overall, I'm pretty impressed. I have to admit, I had not really handled one of these since they came out, really. Even the original APX didn't handle, and a lot of you asked to do the APX A1. I just hadn't gotten around to it. Now that we've got Beretta listening and some guns coming on hand, you can look forward to those reviews. It feels pretty good. I think I may bring a punch to the range and try out this Backstraps under recoil just to make sure my assessment isn't wrong, but the medium feels pretty good out of the box. That's a tabletop review and field strip of the Beretta APX A1 Compact. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the range.